A new standard has been set. Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Ampire Media, Ampire. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about something that I'm going to talk about in a minute, which is Zach Ertz's desire to continue playing. Anyways, up on ESPN.com, also some stuff from the game the other night. No, that's not what you want to see. But if you want to go check out some good stuff, I have some good stuff from previous or before the Eagles game. Anyways, wanted to get today, just going to spend a few minutes talking about the locker clean out day, et cetera. But well, actually, before I get to that point, a reminder that Bram and I will be doing a live stream on Tuesday night. Now, this time it's at 7 p.m. So we're going a little bit earlier this time, 7 p.m. Eastern time for the live stream. Join us there. Bring your questions. And listen, we're not going to sit there and rehash the game. Like we all saw what happened. There's no need to rehash it at this point. This was a magical season. So let's focus on that and focus on going forward, unless you have some questions from the game. I think there's some things from that game that pertain to the future, of course. But I don't, it was a bad game. We all know it. You can't turn the ball over 4 times and beat a team like that. We move on. They move on. Let's go. Anyways, join us there, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Tuesday night. And you gold members, I will be doing another private Zoom this week. Just don't know what day. There's a chance I'll be out of town Thursday, so for a few days. So we'll see where that goes. Anyway, there you go. 7 o'clock Eastern time, Tuesday with Bram Weinstein, the voice of the Commanders. Let's listen, man. It was a really good season. Why don't you come on there and let's talk about it? And it is what mattered, what your takeaways are, and then looking forward. So anyway, I want to get to the locker cleanout day because and just kind of discuss how different and still surreal it was to be out there hearing what people had to say 1 year after hearing almost the exact opposite from a number of guys in that locker room about the culture, about where things needed to go, about the disappointment of the season and some of the angerness or bitterness that was there because of the way things went last year. Especially to be honest, with under offense coordinator Eric Bieniemy, but just the change in atmosphere in the locker room. Clearly, winning a lot of games helps all that, but that locker room was so much better immediately because the energy of the coaching staff, the kind of players they brought in, the mix was really good, and I think that's why this game hurt so much. I was talking to Jeremy Reeves, like, he never cries after games. He did cry after that one because of how much it mattered to them. And I think because of how much they liked playing with one another. Like this, I'm telling you, man, I've never covered a team that was as close as this one. And I think that resonated with them. And we'll get into that in a minute. But let's stick on for a minute just how different it was, because you have a year ago, actually, it's not quite a year ago to the day, because a year ago to the day, this team was done by a few weeks. But in the locker room cleanout day, just the different stories that you're hearing. I mean, now you're having Sam Cosmi talking about the future of the franchise with Daniels, and just how people were so excited to have the fans back in the fold. And I'll get to some of that in a minute. But all that stuff. So whereas last year when they cleaned out, they had no clue who was going to be in charge of anything. Like, they didn't know that Adam Peters was going to be there. They didn't know about Dan Quinn. Nobody knew about Jaden Daniels. I mean, some of these guys don't watch college football, so they don't know what's going to happen, and they don't know what's going to happen to them. So the uncertainty mixed this time with this is now going to be a destination for players. And I think it's such a stark contrast from the end of last season to the end of this season. And it just speaks to the growth of the franchise and how much they were able to accomplish in 1 year. And I could almost guarantee they did not see this in their wildest dreams. But I will say, when Dan Quinn was this is why if you're a coach, you don't go in there and say, yeah, we're going to rebuild. Yeah, it's going to take us a few years. You go in there and say, like, I'm here to win, and maybe you don't do it, but you're not here if you go in there set to rebuild, you set expectations for rebuilding. And here, the expectation was always set to winning. That's why Quinn said he used the word recalibration. He used it again today, but he used it last year. And some people are like, why don't you just say you're rebuilding? Because in his mind, that's not what he was here to do. He was here to win. So when you have that mindset, doesn't always work. It helps when you have number 5. But I do think, just having a good rookie quarterback doesn't make everything right. Like you can have a good rookie quarterback and still not have the kind of year you did. But if you have the right locker room, then you get that rookie quarterback. It's a tremendous boost for an organization. And I will go back to, we talked to a bunch of players. We also talked to Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, and I'm going to go back to how they set this up for Jaden Daniels because it was to me, a stark contrast between how they did it here versus how they did it in Chicago with Caleb Williams. The infrastructure around, it's not just what's on the field, it's also what's in the room. It's the coaches you're surrounding him with, and they did such a better job here with Jaden Daniels than the Bears, for example, did with Caleb Williams. And I think that just speaks to, the planning that went in here. And I think that also you can look at like a lot of the guys they brought in for free agency, excuse me, and the planning that went into that, what they look for in the draft. There's a common theme, and it's not hard to spot. Sometimes teams will say like, "Oh yeah, we're going to bring in all these captains. We drafted all these captains." Yeah. Then you, excuse me, you look at other people they brought in. You're like, "Well, they don't quite fit the mold of what you say you're looking for." So, but I think that these guys were consistent, and it's why this thing turned around so fast. And I think again, I go back to we're sitting there talking to Peters and Quinn. I go back to a year ago when Quinn was hired, and just how dismissive some people were of his chances here. And I always thought it was funny because again, there are a lot of narratives around Ben Johnson. I would say most of the narratives you're going to see are absolutely false. And whether the stuff that comes out, last year or now or whatever, just so much inaccuracy with that, and the inaccuracy around Dan Quinn as well. Because I can tell you, I know firsthand that there were guys that liked Quinn at the top from the beginning, and a lot of it was due to his not just the energy he brings, but the vision he brings, the fact that he'd done it. But I do think that when there were definitely people here who felt like that energy is exactly what this place needed. And I would say this for Ben Johnson would not have brought that. I don't know about Mike McDonald. So, but I do know that Dan Quinn had it. It's really what this place needs. I think there's such a singular focus here now. And I think one of the things is this loss stings for them, right? You talk to the players, it still stings. Terry McLaurin said it stings. Jeremy Reeves talked about how it's going to take him a long time to get over this. There's for some players are going to use this as motivation. The deficit is motivation. The size of the deficit was a big motivator for some, and that's like I think what really pissed them off the most is that the size of the loss, like the lopsided nature of it. They've just felt like that's not who they have been all season. Um, and listen, the Eagles are really good, but that's not who they have been. I think that's really bothered them. And like one person, like, yeah, he goes, if it had been a close game, they could have accepted a little bit better just because, you would have given it a good game. And I think it bothered them that, you're on this national stage again and you played like that and it's not who they are. Um, Now, I will say, like, they're on a national stage against the Lions, and they played extremely well. They're on a national stage against Tampa, and they won that game. So it's not like that should be the only, this should not be the only thought or opinion that people get of them, because if it is, then you ignore too much other stuff. But for some of the players, yes, that did matter. And like I said, one player was like, if it had been closer, I could get over it a little bit earlier. But the fact that it's so lopsided, it's going to motivate me all off season. I said, well, it's kind of a good thing. He said, yeah, but it's only going to motivate like half the roster because it's going to turn over again next year. So you're going to have a lot of new guys. Now, a lot of the starters might be the same, but we don't even know all that yet. So, anyways, but despite all that, what I'll go back to is going back to Quinn is the standards that have been set here. And it's just different. The culture has completely changed. We heard a lot about culture before. The culture has absolutely changed. And I think it's just because of the togetherness they have, and from the top on down, that's Josh Harris, Peters, Quinn, right? That's why you get this kind of a roster. And yes, the roster is going to change. You're not going to have the same locker room. It doesn't, better or worse, it's not going to be the same. But the one thing that these guys trust, and the one thing that you should trust, is the same people who put together this roster and brought in the right kind of guys will be putting together a roster for the next season too. So, and as Peter said, everybody right now is 0-0. Like except for the two teams playing, but beyond after the Super Bowl, everybody's back to the bottom. So you have to build your way back up. And so there's no guarantee that you just automatically go from 12 wins here and then next year you're in the Super Bowl. You were in the championship game this year. You get the it doesn't work like that. So you still have to do that, but you have the same people making the picking and doing the coaching. And I think that makes a big deal. And one of the things that the players would talk about, Mike Samuel still talked about it. He was a rookie for goodness sake, but he talked about this too, that and a lot of people did, and Dan Quinn did, is now when you're bringing people in, they have a standard that's been set. They have an expectation for how things work. That's a big deal. And I think, that I think is man, it's just I think that's huge because I have not covered this team when year to year where they say they were talking about this. Well, the standard for Washington is this. When you come in the building, this is what we expect you to do. This is how we expect you to work. This is how we work here. And you can say, and this is why we do it, because you look at last year. And when you have some of your best players, working like that, you get in line. That's why the importance of a guy like Bobby Wagner coming back. It's not just like you can't just look and see how the stuff on the field. He's still a good player. You still watch him. I was watching the run game again today from Sunday, or the run defense from Sunday. He's still making plays. Does he have the same lateral quickness he once had? No. However, what he does have is a major impact in that room. And that's in the locker room and on the organization, on the quarterback. So like that's why you want guys like that to stick around. Anyways, but here's something that Trustway had to say that I found interesting about how things have changed here and how much have they changed.
Man, like that's crazy. We were so close to getting a shot to go compete, for the Super Bowl. But I think I think the fact that we all have something foundational to fall back on of how intentional Mr. Harris, AP, DQ, how team meetings are, how practice is, of just how intentional, how competitive, and now yeah, that's like somebody was asking me if like this was like kind of like a surprise, like if this year is like, no, like we just knew we were gonna go out and throw freaking punches, and like we lost some and we ended up losing yesterday, but we just knew we loved the guys that we had on our team and we knew they had good players on their team and we were just gonna go cut it loose, and it's a fun freedom to like play under.
Then again, I bring up Wagner. Now then you can go to Zach Ertz, and one of the things I know, like Wagner obviously wants to continue playing. He'd like to be back here. Zach Ertz would like to be back here. He wants to continue playing. So, and that's a story I have up on ESPN, but he talked about the joy he had this year, the fun he had this, he told me it's the most fun. Well, actually it was Cliff Kingsbury told me that this is the most fun he's had coaching. But for Ertz, this is one of his most fun seasons. And I think that's, he wants to be, or it's like, as he said, he can bang down the door, but they still have to open it for him to come back. So I do think that these guys would be back because Ertz remains an effective player. He was one of the best tight ends in the red zone, arguably the best tight end on fourth down because they went for a lot and he used it. Playoffs and regular season combined, he had 10 catches on fourth down. That's the most in the NFL. Not everybody's playing the playoffs, but he is, but that's the most in the NFL in those two, again, regular season and playoffs. So that's how much they look for him. But he wants to continue playing, and this is one of the things he told us today on Monday.
Just being able to be here with the group of guys, the people, the quarterback, Cliff, DQ, has just really allowed me to enjoy it every single day. A lot of times when you're in a tough spot, the weight of just everything is heavy. And so this year just felt free to just go out there and just being able to be myself every day. People that built me up in a way that they believed in me, they had confidence in me to go do what I do. And obviously playing with Jaden was extremely fun. It was a 1 year so far, but I feel like we're just scratching the surface as a quarterback and tight end combination. I don't know what the future holds. I still want to play football next year, so I just want to make that clear that I'm not retiring. Just because I had so much fun this year. I feel rejuvenated. I feel young. This is the most amount of games I played in the season at 34, and I felt like I played good football this year. So for me, it's just figuring out everything going forward, and they know how I feel about this place.
And you had Sam Cosmi too, and we talked to him, and I think it's one of the things that I think a lot of players talked about is how happy they were for the fans that the fans got to experience this and how cool it was for them to see how the fans were. And just like Cosme talked about, like he's got relatives in this area, and he's like, just seeing the videos that mattered to them. Like you should know that. Like that's how much it mattered to them that it was like that. And so, just understand that because how you guys react, they see it. It's all on social media. And so they're going to see all that stuff. And it, like I said, it mattered to them. And I think, like Tressway said, he can't wait till the first game next year to see the reaction to when they're coming to the field and the expectations now will raise. But you know what? That's what you want. And like that's what these guys want. Like they want to have these games matter every time and have it be a big game every time because now the goal is to get to the playoffs, not just get to the playoffs, but do better in the playoffs than what you did even this year. So that it's really quite amazing. That's what I'm saying. It's quite amazing the turnaround from last year. And by the way, Cosme is going to have his surgery on Tuesday, so he also hurt his ankle in that whole ordeal. And but yeah, he's going to have the ACL surgery on Tuesday. And you just want to the whole thing was letting that swelling go down, et cetera. But hopefully for his sake, he gets back in time for the regular season. As he said the other day, like it's not like he doesn't have to run 40s or anything like that. So hopefully the recovery for him, that he can get back out there maybe a little bit sooner, or at least in that 7 to 9 month range, and be okay for the season. But one of the things he also talked about too was with Jaden Daniels. He said, "What a stud! Anybody that wants to come to this team, there's a lot of attraction about this team, especially with 5 back there." So that's what I'm saying. Like, think about that quote. And I even talked to Sam about like, this, think about how different it was last year. Like he was upset last year about the play calling, the emphasis on the pass game and the ignoring of the run game. Sam Howell was upset because there was no collaboration. Like I mean, trust me when I say like all those guys were, every single guy in offense that you would talk to would have been upset about how things transpired last year with the coaching, etc. And then there were a number of players who were upset because the head coach they felt like he abdicated his throne, so to speak. This is so much different, and I think it's why, like, I was talking to Frankie Louvu about this, and he said he's already heard from players who want to be here. Now he can't name them because that you don't want to get anybody in trouble. But there are guys that he said he's heard from who already want to be here. Think about that. That's when have you heard that before? Outside of like, oh, they're going to pay me big time. Oh, of course. But it's not, money always matters in free agency. Let's get that fact. But they also want to go to a place where you have a chance, where it's somewhere like this, where it's like, hey, it's a fun place to come to work. That's where they're at right now. So just ponder that for a minute. Let that soak in. So if you're still stinging from Sunday night, the future here looks really good because of all of this. The immediate future, again, who knows what the heck happens next year? Because it is hard to go. It's a really hard thing to do what the Chiefs have done. It's really hard to do what the Eagles have done. It was hard to do what the Patriots did. But if you get some of those special guys in certain areas, and I think if you have the right coach quarterback combination, which these guys I think do for sure, then I think you can really, and the right GM, the right owner, then you can build something. And I think that's where they're headed. Anyways, speaking of the fans, I think somebody asked Daniels today, like, what did you learn about the fans? And this is what he had to say.
Very passionate. We welcome the sleeping giant, and hopefully, we can keep building on that next year. And we're going to need all their support when the season come back around.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Daniels also talked about the veteran presence on the team and how much that mattered to him. I think we've heard that throughout the year, obviously. I think you know that, but just how much he leaned on guys like, from Jeremy Reeves. Like there was one time Reeves told me that, during a practice in November, that Reeves did something on the scout team that Jaden wanted to go talk to him afterwards about why did you react that way to this action by me, by the offense. And so he picked his brain, said they talked for a little bit just so he could understand why. And he's like, what could I have done better to maybe fool you on that? That's the lengths that Daniels goes to, but he'll rely on any veteran. Jeremy Reeves, Zach Ertz, he talks to all the time. Bobby Wagner, he talks to all the time. Terry McLaurin, he talks to all the time. Like all those guys. And He's always looking for answers. And it is funny because with one of the things with Ertz is that he keeps talking about that they've just scratched the surface of the quarterback tight end combination and that he wishes he was 22 again so he could play with Daniels for his entire career. So it's just like I said, it's quite different than it was a year ago. I just also think by the players, and I think by you guys, there's a lot of trust in what Peters and Quinn can do. And it's funny, like watching them again, watching them up at the dais today. We were in the main auditorium for their presser, and just seeing the looks on Peters' face, the joy and adulation he had after the Tampa game and the Detroit game, I should say, and then this the how deflated he was last night, and Quinn as well. But especially we saw, Peters in the locker room, he's going up to hugging some guys, but just how deflated he looks, and he still kind of looked like that today. And even he said he's going down to the Senior Bowl on Tuesday. He said he was not planning that at all. That was not the plan for him to go. They weren't looking ahead like that. I think it's just how they all were. And but it's just there's still the disappointment in the eyes, etc. But for Peters, that at least when he gets down to Mobile, he'll be with the scouts again, and you start the process of looking ahead to try and improve your team, and that always kind of gets you energized too. So for as much as you want to be playing now, like there is that. And so the other thing too, and going back to when you're going to lose a lot of guys in the roster, because again, it'll turn over. You have the standard, but I think the other thing that someone else brought up to me too is that just how Quinn is and how focused he is. And so, like, they feel like there won't be any slippage because he is as focused. I mean, I don't know that I've covered a coach like maybe I have, but I think Quinn is as focused a coach as I've covered. I'll say that. And by that, I mean, like, what, and I've told you this before, like, what's today? Today's Monday. This is what we do. This is all I'm worried about. Tomorrow's Tuesday. This is what we're going to do. Tomorrow's Wednesday. This is what we're going to do, etc. But there's not looking ahead. There's not getting, sidetracked by, just things that don't matter, unimportant stuff. He doesn't get sidetracked by that. So I think he does a really good job with that. And that's why that's why they think things will build off this because of that. Like there are people asking about the culture of the building. How do you build on that? Well, you just get the right people and you trust that the people who got the right people will continue to get the right people. Not everybody's going to hit, but you keep trying. And by the way, I did want to read something from what um, uh, Peters was asked about Marshawn Lattimore. I'm going to call up the quote here for you, and I want to read this to you because I think it's worth um, hearing what he say, and it certainly suggests that he's not. For anybody who thought they might part ways after 1 year, well, that's not going to happen. And this is what Peter said. Marshawn, he came into a tough situation. He was injured when he got here, and so anytime you come into a new team and you're injured, it's really hard to integrate. And plus, you're coming in at the end of the season, so at the same time, you're rehabbing. You're learning a new defense. You're trying to meet new teammates. And so it was a tough situation for him to come in. But what was cool was we saw him get better. We saw him get more acclimated, not only to the defense, but to his teammates. Really excited for him to have an offseason with us and really learn the defense from the ground up and really have that full runway of training camp and leading into the season. Looking forward to that. So if you're wondering about Lattimore, there's your answer. And I said this after the game, like he was a guy that you got for the future as much as you got for the here and now. So that what Peter said there kind of cements that. And then, again, it's just a different vibe. And like even Terry said, this is going to sting for a while, but one of the things he's talked about is the leaders now setting the standards, and they've set the standards, and that matters. But the leaders now continue to set that standard and upholding it. That's the big thing too. So I think when you have that, you can absorb new guys and just keep building on that. But you also, again, you're looking for the right kind of guys who fit your culture and then go. You're not going to get a bunch of guys who don't and then hope they do because, oh, this is our standard. You get guys who adhere to standards and then know how to work, et cetera. Also, talk to Noah Brown. And one thing you need to know about him, he said he's feeling really good. He is clearly expecting to play. I would say he would like to be back here. They're all going to say that, but I do think he would. So that's, he said he's in a good spot. He's running, he's lifting and all that. So he's in a good spot. Was never going to come back this year, but he is in a good spot going forward and no limitations for him. So, and then Marcus Mariota. Mariota's been an invaluable mentor to Jaden Daniels. And he said, his family's on the West Coast. I think in an ideal world, he would get a chance to play out west and maybe get a chance to start. It may not be ideal. And one thing he did say is how much he loved playing here and would love to be back. However, we don't know what's going to happen with him because, again, he may get a starting job somewhere else or a chance to start. Like as he said, he's been told that before other times, and maybe you don't quite get that or doesn't materialize the way you thought. But that could be something to factor. His family is definitely going to be something to factor. He had another child born in December. So we'll see what happens there. But he's been invaluable here for Daniels for sure. So that's the last one. And there you go, folks. That's all I got for today. Again, I apologize for rambling. I'm kind of tired. It's a little bit late on a Monday, and it's been a long several weeks, but it's been a lot of fun. I don't think I'll ever have a season like this again. I think they could be better. I think they could win a Super Bowl for sure in the next 5 years. That shouldn't shock you. If they win it next year, it wouldn't shock me. But I don't think we'll ever have this again. It's just been a magical ride, and it's been so much fun to cover. And again, I said this yesterday, but I appreciate you guys always listening. Join Bram and I for the live stream at 7 o'clock Tuesday. Bring your questions, bring whatever you want, and then we'll chat it out. And then again, I'll have another episode on Thursday. You Gold members, I'll make an announcement tomorrow night during the live stream about when the next private Zoom is, and we'll go from there. So, folks, thanks a lot for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.